The Middle East conflict has entered one of its most dangerous and unpredictable phases in recent history, with Iran significantly intensifying its military actions against the United Arab Emirates, particularly targeting the capital, Abu Dhabi. What began as a confrontation between Iran, the United States, and Israel has now expanded into a wider regional crisis, drawing in Gulf states, threatening global energy routes, and raising fears of a prolonged and devastating war. The latest escalation follows reports that the UAE is considering joining a U.S. and Israel-backed initiative to secure the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow maritime corridor that serves as a lifeline for global energy markets. Nearly one-fifth of the world's oil supply passes through this route, making it one of the most strategically vital waterways on the planet. Any disruption here has immediate and far-reaching consequences, not just for the region, but for economies worldwide. In response to what it perceives as a shift in the West's role from neutral partner to active participant, Iran has launched a series of coordinated missile and drone strikes aimed at Emirati territory. The most recent attacks saw cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and unmanned aerial vehicles targeting areas in and around Abu Dhabi. Emirati air defense systems intercepted many of these incoming threats, but falling debris from those interceptions caused fires and injuries on the ground. Industrial zones, particularly within the Khalifa economic zones in Abu Dhabi, became focal points of emergency response operations. Fires broke out after fragments of intercepted missiles struck facilities, sending plumes of smoke into the air and forcing authorities to mobilize firefighting units and medical teams. Several people were injured, most of them foreign workers caught in the aftermath of falling debris. Authorities acted swiftly to contain the situation, extinguishing multiple fires and securing the affected areas. At the same time, officials issued public advisories urging residents to rely only on official sources for updates, reflecting concerns about misinformation during a rapidly evolving security crisis. These attacks are not isolated incidents, but part of a broader campaign by Iran, which has been escalating its military operations across the Gulf in response to ongoing U.S. and Israeli strikes on its territory. The scale and frequency of these attacks indicate a deliberate strategy aimed at expanding the conflict's geographic scope while increasing pressure on regional adversaries. At the heart of this escalation lies a fundamental shift in how Iran views the UAE. For years, Abu Dhabi maintained a delicate balance, hosting Western military assets while also engaging diplomatically with Tehran.
However, recent developments appear to have altered that perception. Iranian officials now believe that the UAE is playing a more active role in facilitating U.S. and Israeli operations. According to regional reports, Tehran suspects that Emirati infrastructure, including air bases and advanced technological systems, is being used to support intelligence gathering, surveillance, and possibly even targeting operations against Iranian assets.
These allegations extend to claims involving advanced data analytics and artificial intelligence systems, which Iranian sources say are being used to process information related to Iranian military and strategic sites. While such claims remain unverified, they have nonetheless contributed to a hardening of Iran's stance. As a result, what was once a cautious approach toward the UAE has now transformed into a policy of direct retaliation. Iranian leadership has signaled that any country perceived as assisting its adversaries will face consequences, and the recent strikes on Abu Dhabi appear to be a clear demonstration of that doctrine. The Strait of Hormuz has emerged as the central battleground in this evolving conflict. Iran's strategy has focused heavily on asserting control over this critical waterway, effectively turning it into a geopolitical lever. By restricting maritime traffic, deploying naval assets, and reportedly laying mines, Iran has significantly reduced the flow of commercial shipping through the strait. Shipping volumes have dropped dramatically, with many vessels avoiding the route altogether due to security concerns. The impact has been immediate and severe, disrupting global supply chains and driving up energy prices. Oil markets have reacted sharply, with prices surging amid fears of prolonged instability. Iran's actions in the strait are not merely tactical, but strategic. By controlling access to one of the world's most important trade routes, Tehran is effectively raising the stakes for all parties involved. The message is clear. Any attempt to pressure Iran militarily will come at a global economic cost. In response to these developments, the UAE has begun to shift its posture. Rather than remaining solely focused on defending its territory, Abu Dhabi is now exploring ways to actively contribute to securing the Strait of Hormuz. Reports suggest that the UAE is considering participation in a multinational maritime task force aimed at ensuring safe passage for commercial vessels. Such a move would mark a significant escalation in the UAE's involvement, transforming it from a target of attacks into an active player in efforts to counter Iran's control of the strait. The proposed task force would likely involve naval escorts for oil tankers and cargo ships, as well as coordinated patrols to deter further disruptions. However, the creation of such a coalition is far from straightforward. While countries like Bahrain have expressed support, others remain cautious. Efforts to secure a United Nations mandate could face opposition from Russia and China, both of which maintain close ties with Iran and have historically resisted measures perceived as hostile to Tehran. The Gulf region itself is divided on how to respond to the crisis. Some nations, including Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are advocating for stronger action to counter Iran's capabilities. They argue that simply ending hostilities is not enough and that Iran's ability to disrupt regional stability must be addressed. Others, such as Oman and Qatar, have taken a more cautious approach, emphasizing diplomacy and de-escalation. Oman, in particular, has positioned itself as a mediator, seeking to facilitate dialogue between the conflicting parties and prevent further escalation. This division reflects the complexity of the situation, where economic interests, security concerns, and political alliances intersect. For many Gulf states, the stakes are extraordinarily high. The region's economic stability depends heavily on the uninterrupted flow of oil and gas exports, making the security of the Strait of Hormuz a top priority. The United States, under President Donald Trump, has been actively pushing for greater international involvement in securing the strait. Washington has deployed additional military assets to the region and has called on allies to contribute to efforts aimed at restoring maritime security. At the same time, the U.S. has made it clear that it does not intend to bear the burden alone. American officials have emphasized that the strait's significance extends far beyond U.S. interests, affecting countries across Europe, Asia, and beyond. Despite this, many allies have been reluctant to commit military resources. Concerns about escalation, the risk of direct confrontation with Iran, and domestic political considerations have all contributed to a cautious approach. Diplomatic efforts are ongoing, with multiple countries attempting to broker a resolution. Pakistan, Turkey, and other regional actors have been involved in facilitating talks, reflecting a broader recognition that the conflict cannot be resolved through military means alone. President Trump has extended a deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, signaling a willingness to allow more time for negotiations.
At the same time, he has warned that failure to comply could result in significant military action, including strikes on Iran's energy infrastructure. This dual approach, combining pressure with diplomacy, highlights the delicate balance that policymakers are attempting to maintain.
While there is a desire to avoid a full-scale war, there is also a recognition that unchecked escalation could have catastrophic consequences. Meanwhile, the conflict continues to expand. Iran-aligned groups, including the Houthis in Yemen, have entered the fray, launching attacks that further complicate the situation. These developments underscore the growing risk of a regional war that extends beyond the immediate parties involved. The involvement of proxy groups, combined with direct state-to-state confrontations, creates a volatile environment in which miscalculations could have far-reaching consequences. Economic impacts are already being felt around the world. Rising oil prices, disrupted shipping routes, and increased insurance costs for vessels are placing pressure on global markets. Countries that rely heavily on imported energy are particularly vulnerable, facing rising costs and potential shortages. In Africa and parts of Asia, the effects are especially pronounced, with higher fuel prices translating into increased costs for goods and services. This highlights the interconnected nature of the global economy, where regional conflicts can have worldwide repercussions. As the situation continues to evolve, the question remains whether a resolution can be achieved before the conflict escalates further. The Strait of Hormuz remains the focal point, with its reopening seen as a critical step towards stabilizing the region. However, achieving that goal will require a combination of military deterrence, diplomatic engagement, and international cooperation, factors that are not always easy to align. For now, the region remains on edge. Missile strikes continue, alliances are shifting, and the risk of further escalation looms large. The coming days and weeks will be crucial in determining whether the conflict can be contained or whether it will spiral into a broader war with global consequences. What is clear is that the stakes have never been higher. The battle for control of the Strait of Hormuz is not just a regional issue, it is a global one with implications for energy security, economic stability, and the balance of power in the international system. And as tensions rise and the situation grows more complex, the world is watching closely, aware that the next move by any side could change the course of this conflict and shape the future of the region for years to come.